Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be talking about probably the best cosmic horror novel I have read in ages. Absolutely incredible novel that first blew my mind as a film and then recently blew my mind again as a book, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. My copy here is actually the Area X trilogy, which has all three novels from the trilogy in it, but in this video I will only be talking about the book Annihilation. I am moving forward in the trilogy. I'm halfway through the second novel. Annihilation is the story of four women that are sent into a zone that has been marked off for over 30 years. That is contaminated. Most of the world think that it's contaminated by some kind of ecological disaster, because that's what the media and the government has been reporting to people. But the book seems to question if there's not some form of alien contaminant going on. Before I move on any further, I do want to bring up the movie. This movie was absolutely incredible. I went and saw it just randomly. It looked like kind of a scary sci-fi movie. And my friend and I were bored one night looking for some kind of movie to watch, and we just chose this one. I went in with no expectations, thinking it would be kind of cool. And the movie really had us on the edge of our seats and blew our minds. We love this movie, and I love this movie. And the movie is so good that I was excited to read this, but also a little nervous, and I've put it off for a long time. But I decided this trip down, I'm going to listen to it coming back. And it's strange because the movie, while I feel it captures the heart of this, it doesn't tell the exact same story. And in my brain, I honestly separate them. I take the movie and I put it aside when I read this. And I am... The Annihilation is one of my favorite movies of all time. And this is now one of my favorite horror sci-fi novels of all time. But they don't connect in my brain. They're two different things. They really are. This story is so much different than the movie. And the movie, while I think overall theme is the same, and I'll get into that in my deep read, the steps that lead to it are completely different. They're like two completely different stories with the same theme at the end, is the best way that I can describe these. So these four women, a biologist, a surveyor, an anthropologist, and a psychologist, all go into Area X. And they're not given much information. They don't know what Area X actually is. They all have these boxes that they wear on their belts, and if the red light goes on, they know they're in danger. They're not allowed to bring any modern technology. All the technology is completely archaic, and the novel opens with them going to base camp. It starts in Area X, and these four women who really don't know much. In fact, they've been hypnotized to not remember even crossing the border into Area X. And they all make it to base camp, but they discover along the way this... It's a hole in the ground, but it's actually an intelligent design built hole. It's got stairs that go down kind of a spiral down this, what the biologist calls a tower underground, but the rest of the group calls a tunnel under the ground. So the first part of this book is them kind of obsessed with exploring this tower, and they go into the tower, and there is some very strange, culty, sermon-like, Cthulhu, old gods style writing on the wall. And the biologist discovers that the writing on the wall is made out of fungal material, and the biologist breathes in a spore, and slowly over quite a few days begins to change. And this is the story, really, it would seem like the four women in Area X. It is. It's the story of the four women in Area X, although most of the narrative is about the biologist. Before I get into kind of my thoughts on the themes and why you should read this book, I want to talk really quickly about So in the year 2000, or around that time, Jeff Vandermeer went on a hike, and it was a 14-mile hike through the St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge in Florida. And this walk was very inspirational for him, and he started to look at all the flora and the fauna as he was walking, and was inspired to tell this tale of a place that has flora and fauna that don't really make sense when you think of how Earth flora and fauna really works. So he was inspired by that, and 14 years after that walk, it's interesting, 14. It was a 14-mile hike. It took him 14 years to write the book, and it came out in 2014. So this book falls very, very strongly in the cosmic horror genre, which is a genre that I really enjoy, but for me, it's always had some limitations. One of those limitations is that the writers will always, I feel, write themselves into a point where they have to reveal the cosmic horror, whatever this horror is. And of course, when you can't talk about cosmic horror without talking about Lovecraft. And one of the things that I always had kind of a hard time with Lovecraft is that when he would reveal these cosmic horrors, instead of describing them, he would talk about how seeing these things drove the person mad, even to the extent of a person's writing in their diary and suddenly is explaining how they're going mad while seeing this unexplainable thing. And I always found those endings really kind of a letdown, because of course, I know that in reading, you want the reader's imagination to do a large chunk of the work, and explaining something can kind of ruin what the person was seeing in their imagination. But it is strange to have to stop the story the same way every time and leave it all to the reader's imagination. And I was really worried about this occurring in this book, and it didn't. And I can't give you a lot of the details, but I will in the deep read, which I'll be doing, which will be coming out in a couple of days. But what I love most about this book is that when Jeff Vandermeer comes to this point, he does not look away. And while it is difficult to describe what the biologist is seeing, Jeff Vandermeer still describes it, and still describes what happens to the biologist by looking upon this thing. And that alone makes it 100% one of the best cosmic horror stories I've ever read. Add to that Jeff Vandermeer's incredible prose, and this book is a winner all the way around. I have not had this much fun reading, or in this case listening to a book in a long time. Like there were passages that I was jumping out of my seat, so excited to be hearing the prose so beautifully written and describing stuff so psychedelic and strange. It was such an enjoyable read. I cannot recommend this novel enough. It's incredible. If you can only read one of these and can't read all three, this is worth a read in itself. I've gotten a couple of different reviews. It's interesting. Some people say you have to read the other two novels, and I'm halfway through the second novel now. And other people say don't read on from this. And so it'll be interesting for me as I read through to decide whether or not this needs to be read on. But I will say this one piece stands alone. I know there are other books that probably explain more about what's going on in the Southern Reach, but in my opinion, this book is absolutely a standalone, incredible book. If those other two novels weren't ever written, I would still be sitting here talking about how good this novel is. So it's a quick read. I think it's 6 hours on Audible. If you do get it on Audible, make sure to get the Area X book and not just Annihilation. If you're interested in reading the other two, they cost the same, I think, a credit if you're using credits. The Annihilation that is read on this is the exact same one you can get that isn't Area X. So if you get this, you get 2 extra books for the price of one. So definitely get the Area X one on Audible. So if you haven't read this, go out, grab it on Audible, grab the book, read this. I think you'll like it. It's coming up in October. We're going to start getting into the spooky stuff. This is a great spooky story, and I really can't recommend this one enough. I loved it. Peak cosmic horror. All right, if you watched this to the end, thank you very much. If you liked it, please click like. And if you like this kind of content, please click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. Thank you so much for watching.